I have a hard time finding the line of when something might be a bad idea. I like adventure. I like outdoor activities. The story starts in New Hampshire. Well, no, it actually doesn't. The story starts in Boston. My family flew into the Boston airport. I don't know what it's called. And then we got a rental car and drove to New Hampshire. I don't think it's all that far, maybe an hour or two with a couple of stops or some basic supplies because we're staying in this cabin on the lake. So there's not accommodations already made, you know. Cook for yourself, clean yourself, and enjoy yourself most of all. So by the time my family finally got to this cabin, it was pretty late at night and the sun had already set and it was getting dark. And so for most people, it's like, okay, travel day, get settled in, get some rest, and then, first thing in the morning, we're going to do something fun, go on a little kayaking trip, go to the little beach and make some sand castles or play volleyball or, you know, do something cool. That's not how my family operates most of the time. We start the adventure as soon as we can. And so I had the great idea of, what we should do? Paddleboard at night in the middle of this lake when it's very dark and the only light are a handful of lights that are illuminated on the houses around the shore. Now, this wasn't the first time that I had this idea. We had been to this lake before, and we had done this activity before, and it was really a fantastic time. We went out on paddle boards. It was a beautiful, clear night. Not super far, just far enough out where the light pollution from the bathroom is not so bad. And you just lay on the paddleboard on your back, eyes up to the sky, and you see these amazing stars and the super low light pollution, and you're counting the shooting stars, and you're chatting it up, and it's just fun. And so here we are back at this lake, and heck, I think we should do it again. It's nighttime. Let's go see some stars. Let's go hang out on the water. Let's start this trip out with some fun. So that's what we do. Me and my siblings decide, yeah, let's do it. Heck yeah. At this particular lake and with all the cabins, there's a sort of community area where there's paddleboards and kayaks, and there's a public volleyball court and a public gazebo, and it's all public, and you can go grab a kayak or a paddleboard and use them as much as your heart desires. Uh, and so that was the plan. Me and my siblings went down to the shore where they had stored the paddleboards and the kayaks, and we noticed that there were some people talking around a fire near the shore, and we didn't really think anything of it. It's a public area. Do whatever you want. We don't care. We're just here for the paddleboards, and we'll see you later. Anyways, as we get down to the shore, these people notice us, and I think they say hello, and we say hello back, and they ask, where we're from, what we're doing here, vacation, whatever. So we just give them the basic rundown, here on vacation, just want to have a good time. Yeah, we're here till, next Friday or whatever. And we're going to go paddleboard on the lake right now. And they swiftly tell us, oh, not a great idea. And I'm kind of like, yeah, I know it's not a great idea. We've done it before. We're going to wear life jackets, and we'll be safe. But they're like, oh, no, 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 no. I mean, yeah, that's not safe. But another reason why that's probably not safe is because they have cameras. And if the owners see you taking their public kayaks out in the middle of the night when it's not allowed, most likely, probably not a good look. So then my siblings and I are, oh, we didn't know that. Thank you for telling us. We appreciate it. We will not do that. So we walk back to our cabin, a little defeated, not a big deal, because I have an ace of spades up my sleeve. This particular cabin we're staying in has their own set of paddle boards and kayaks. Okay. Not allowed to use the resorts, public kayaks or paddle boards. Okay. How about I use my own? There's nothing that says I can't use my own stuff whenever I want, as far as I'm concerned. And this is a poor as far as I'm concerned because I'm not concerned about much anyways. So we scraped together a couple paddle boards and a couple, I don't think they were paddle boards, but they were flotation devices and flat enough to lay on. And so we decided this is good enough to float on. So we all gather our things, grab our life jackets and our phones in case, somebody needs us, and so we can just have any sort of, contact in case something goes south. Not thinking anything will, but that's where this story really begins. Like I mentioned before, there are some lights on the shore, and they're just illuminated from outdoor house lights, not like spotlights, just like a light you'd have on the outside of your house, just to show, this house is here, we're alive, we're awake. On Halloween, if the porch light is on, they're probably gonna come to the door and give you candy. Heck yeah, I'm knocking on that door. No porch light, no knock. Same principle here. Many houses, lights out, probably don't want to be bothered with a higher electricity bill. Some houses have them on. That's fine. Ideally, no lights are on, and you get a beautiful view of the sky and the stars and everything. As we start on our journey to gain some distance from the shore, we notice that there's one house in particular has a really bright light. And at first we kind of think, oh man, that sucks. This house has a really bright light and stopping us from seeing the stars that we were really hoping to see. Shooting stars, star constellations, you name it. But we didn't think much of it, and we continued to quietly paddle out on this lake. And as we do such, this particular house that has the light, it turns off. And we're like, oh, perfect. It must be on a timer or something. So then now it's much darker, and the stars are more visible. We're enjoying ourselves. We're making jokes, talking, whatever. Obviously all keeping quiet because it is fairly late. Not late enough where like there's be a noise ordinance, but it's dark and it's late, and your voice travels on water like really well. And since it's dead silent and where we are, we're not trying to, cause alarm or bring any more attention to ourselves, because we're all fairly certain that we're probably not supposed to be doing this, but we want to, and so we are. As we continue our small journey around this lake, this light turns back on, and now by the time that it's turned on, we start to think this light might not be on a timer. There's a chance it's motion activated, but unlikely because it is so far away from where we are, but it's so bright, and it just didn't seem reasonable that it would be motion activated, because usually motion activated, you have to be close. Like a driveway might have a motion activated light, but it's only going to motionally activate if you're in the driveway, like 20 feet or less. I don't we are well over 20 yards from this house, so I don't see any reason why it would be motion activated. So the next thing that comes to your mind is, oh, there might be someone who is manually activating this light. Okay, that's a little scary to think about. It's a little odd, but maybe, maybe it's not. Maybe someone's just messing with the light. Maybe they're just having a good old time turning the lights on and off for no particular reason. Let's just go with that, okay? So we continue to paddleboard around, keeping an eye on this house and its lights on or off. And as the light goes off, we enjoy our night a little bit more with a little less light pollution. And then it turns on, and everyone goes silent, and we're all fearful that, oh, okay, this light is probably activated by somebody and not remote control or sensor. So we're trying to paddle ourselves to an area that is in a little cove that is hidden from eyesight of this house. So as we're doing that, this light is turning on and off and on and off, and it's very scary because we're like, maybe these people are like gonna call the police and we're gonna have to deal with that. And we're pretty much sure that we know we're in the wrong here at this point, and we just don't want to be caught or seen by this light. So everyone's trying to be extra quiet, whispering, paddling quietly, not making big splashes, And when you are paddling, doing it at times when the light is off and not pointed at you. Because at this point, it seems more like a spotlight and less like a courtesy light. But eventually, we get around this little cove and we're pretty much out of view of this light. And so we have to make a game plan. Okay, how are we going to get back? We could go to the coast where we are now and walk back, but none of us have shoes. I think it's like a gravelly dirt path, not that big of a deal. But then you have to carry the paddle boards, and they're kind of heavy and they're wet, and you really don't want to have to do that. But the only way to get back is to basically go by this house again. So you're basically putting yourself at risk from being put in the spotlight, quite literally, by this house. I was pulling for, let's just get out and walk back. Like, you make your feet a little tougher. It's not that big of a deal. Then we just stay out of eyesight from this light, and we're done with this. Everyone gets home safe. No one's injured. No one's hurt. And we're all good. But my siblings outnumber me, and so we ultimately decide, okay, we're going to send back one or two at a time. I think at this point, there were probably about 6 or 8 of us out on the water. And so we have a lot of us out here. So we're thinking we'll send, 1 or 2 back at a time. And then since we all have our phones, we can get in contact with each other and say, okay, coast is clear, lights on, lights off, paddle back now, don't paddle, or, make a run for it or whatever. And so a couple of us head back to the cabin, and I don't know what happens. I don't think the whole plan of communicating really got through to everyone because, mind you, we're all trying to whisper and be quiet and not make much noise, and everyone's kind of disagreeing, but as quietly as you can, pretty much. And so a couple of us head back, and then eventually it's finally my turn. And so it's just me. I'm kind of towards the end of the group, and I am basically laying on my back, paddling with essentially my fingertips in my palm, as much surface area as that is, not much at all. And I'm just making these tiny little flailing movements as I'm laying on my back, trying to be as low profile and discreet as possible while this house has a light on and off. And it seems like it is just pointing right at me at times, and then it's off, and I feel like I'm just a thief in the night, invisible until this stupid light turns back on. Finally, I get back to the house, and everyone does. Everyone's safe. No one's hurt. No police or any officials show up. But it was just kind of crazy because this was supposed to be a fun, let's go watch the stars. Let's stargaze. Let's go count the shooting stars, and let's share stories of, times past of when we've been at this lake and what we're excited to do at this next trip. But no, it was far from that. It was basically everyone fearing for their lives because this stupid house has a spotlight on us basically all night long. And we all think, oh, we're done. We're caught. We're going to get kicked out. We just ruined the family vacation. It's just, it's not exactly how we wanted everything to go. But in the end, I did see a few shooting stars. I did do a little stargazing. Not much. Mostly just fear. But we got back, and the trip itself was a lot of fun. We never heard or had any issues with anybody telling us what we can and can't do. And never did find out if that house was a spotlight or just a courtesy light. But yeah. All right. That's it for this one. Bye-bye.